for coming.
Oh no, it isn't.
No heckling yet, Larry.
All right.
Hiya, I'm Russell Payne. I'm an author, writer, but I'm also a massive Jack Kirby fan, and I've been asked to come here today to represent the Jack Kirby Museum and Research Centre. Everyone heard of that? Jack Kirby? No? Yeah.
In New York, yeah.
Good man, yes. Feel free to, except for Larry, feel free to ask questions or butt in and participate if you want, or cheer when I say something really entertaining. That'd be nice, but you don't have to. I've done this talk at some schools and asked this question. It's a simple question. Who is Jack Kirby? And there's a class of children that I asked the question. I asked to put your hand up if you've heard of Jack Kirby. That's not the same photo, that's just children not responding because none of them have heard of Jack Kirby. So, who here has heard of Jack Kirby? For that. Hey, well, we are at a comic book convention, so they're on the left now. Their hands haven't gone up. But I should think so, absolutely, because he co-created the Marvel Universe, didn't he? But it's a big question. Who is Jack Kirby? And I'm going to talk to you about it just for a little bit now. There's loads of, when you're a fan of someone and you hero worship a bit, don't you? And there's all sorts of crazy stories about Jack Kirby. He did a lot of things over his life. He worked for 7 whole decades, from the 1930s to the 1990s. So it's a lot to pack in. And if you just know him from, say, the Fantastic Four or from New Gods maybe, or from some of the films you see at the cinema, there's a lot more to him. He had a great sense of humour. There's a great story that when he was a member of the CAPS, the Comic Art Professional Society, they used to have get-togethers. But this was before the internet. And before the internet, you couldn't find what people looked like. You couldn't just go on Wikipedia and find out everything you needed to know in 30 seconds. So he'd get together with comic book professionals, and there's one time they got together, and people obviously knew who Jack Kirby was, but didn't know him physically. And he was overheard introducing himself to everyone as Ramon de los Flores, who was an Italian pornographer who specialised in erotic comics. And he didn't just do this a couple of times, he spent quite a long time going around everyone at the convention saying this, to the point where when people arrived who knew who Jack Kirby was, the people he talked to didn't believe it was Jack Kirby. They all thought he was an Italian pornographer. so there's a lot to the guy. That made me laugh, it was funny. But he's probably most famous for the mainstream stuff. The Fantastic Four. That's a great cover. This is the next half hour is me just looking at pages that I like. It's great, isn't it? Inhumans. If you want, as each one comes up, you can express your appreciation for each one. Hooray! Depending on how much you like it. Do you want to try the Fantastic Four again?
Hey.
Oh, fantastic! Invisible girl. Invisible. Inhumans. X-Men, I mean the original X-Men, but you know.
Pole dancer.
This is fantastic, audience participation, it's amazing. Well, I mean, these are all what are the most famous. Hey. Now, slightly in dispute, but I mean, he was around when Spider-Man was in, and that's the most famous Spider-Man image, isn't it? Steve Ditko didn't do that, Jack Kirby drew that, so...
Well, Steve Ditko did draw the cover.
He drew a terrible cover.
And Kirby came in and redrew it.
He drew a rubbish cover, and then Kirby came in and drew a completely different one. Yeah. I should have put the Ditko cover up, actually, because it is shockingly bad. I'll put that in next time. The Pact, the New Gods, one of the best stories ever written. If you're not a Kirby fan of his writing, the Pact's great. That's another New Gods page, still liked it. And of course, New Gods was part of Fourth World.
Hey!
Fantastic. Devil Dinosaur?
Wow.
Come on. Oh, now we're talking. Yeah. One person. Thank you, sir.
I wasn't ready.
She-Man. Fantastic.
Hey!
Oh, yes. Complete silence.
Oh.
I really like Captain Victory, because although he was getting a bit older by then, his imagination was still fantastic. One of the characters in Captain Victory Paranex, the fighting fetus. A giant, cosmic, unborn baby that's also a galactic warrior. What in the name of natural variation is that thing? It's fantastic. It doesn't get any better than a giant fighting a cosmic fetus for me at all. And of course, before all this, he was looking cool when he was younger. He worked with Joe Simon. He created a whole genre of comics, created romance comics. Sold, I think his first issue sold 1 million copies. He's had a number of successes throughout his life. Newsboy Legion early on, and of course, Captain America. That got an airing again in the film, isn't it? So that's just a few I liked. You know, that was 5 minutes on the internet, just having a look at some Jack Kirby covers. But there's literally hundreds more. I think the one website listed 370 characters individually that were created, but there were loads on the list there that I knew that went on. So I actually struggled to work out what they were. So it was much more than just an Italian pornographer, wasn't it? He had all these amazing ideas, and he's probably done quite a few things you haven't heard. He did a lot of animation work. Before he did any comics, he was a tweener on Popeye cartoons. He did the Topps card stuff. He did a thing with the CIA. Have you ever heard of that? The Lords of Light. There was Roger Zelensky wrote a novel called Lords of Light. Good book. You should read it. And a guy called Barry Geller, I think, got the green light to do the film as a project. It was a big epic science fiction thing. And they got his favourite artist, Jack Kirby, to do all the set designs. If I'm organising, if I had pictures. There for that. And it was like a sort of pseudo-Buddhist story. So a lot of designs were a little bit Indian. And it was going to be this big film that all Jack Kirby inspired. And even better, not only was it going to be a film inspired by Jack Kirby, there was going to be a theme park inspired by Jack Kirby. They were going to use the sets from the actual film to be a theme park afterwards. But it didn't happen. You can't go there because they had the meeting about the film, and some of the funds got embezzled. So the film never got off the ground. But shortly after, I think it was the late 70s, in 79-80, there was this massive Iranian hostage crisis in Tehran. The Ayatollah Khomeini. Yeah. I'm talking about something I know nothing about now. My knowledge of Ayatollah Khomeini is the spitting image puppet, and that's it. But there was some 52 American hostages were taken in the Iranian embassy, but 6 managed to escape to the Canadian ambassador's house, and they had to find a way of getting into Iran with a really good cover story. The CIA, not the IRA, I'll be wrong on that. The CIA, and they used the Lords of Light project as a false film, and the CIA used all Jack Kirby's drawings and set designs along with a different script. So, and they set up a production company, and Spielberg sent scripts to them. It was all completely looked legitimate, and they fabricated this whole thing just so a CIA team posing as a film crew could go into Iran and extract these hostages, and it worked. So they saved the lives.
They took in both passports.
That's right, they went in with...
And so they came out, these American diplomats came out on Canadian passports. That's right. And Ben Affleck is currently making a film.
He is. Well, don't mention it now, because later on, that's like the big payoff later on.
Oh.
So you didn't hear that? Okay. But that's the last we'll probably hear of that CIA story. But isn't that interesting?
Wikipedia.
Sorry, so was there originally going to be a film, or was it all a big show?
No, there was originally going to be a film.
And then they took over
Jack did the work for. But the film, due to some financial issues, got panned. But then they used all the work Jack had done to make the film look convincing. I think it was going to be called Argo. The sort of, if you ask that gentleman later.
Apparently this is going to be very informative.
But what I want to talk about today, other than that, is why is Jack Kirby, when he did so much and he's so influential, why hasn't that many people heard of him? I mean, it's lovely that most of you put your hands up, but for the children's class, no one. And really, when someone's that influential in a subject, you've heard of them, haven't you? There are even scientists on the board. If someone said to you, name the most famous scientist in the world, you'd say, Einstein. You see, I guessed that. Einstein. And you do associate certain people at the top of the field, even though you might not be a scientist or know much about science. If someone said to you, who's the most famous computing magnate in the world, you'd probably say Steve Jobs or Bill Gates. Yeah? And most people have heard of him. He said, tell me the most famous footballer in the world. You'd say. Now I know nothing about football, so I said Kevin Keegan. I don't know if that's really current or not. But you know, even I've never watched a football match in my life, but I've heard of footballers. I'm aware of people at the top of the game. King of rock and roll. Elvis Presley. Someone said, name me the most famous boxer in the world. Muhammad Ali. You know, we all picked 7 or 8 different subjects there. We all immediately came up with names. It's a great picture, like Kirby picture of Ali, isn't it? Like that. But if you said to someone, tell me the most famous comic book artist in the world.
Stan Lee.
Yes.
And
he's not even an artist. Cannot even draw. But universally, if you say to people that aren't comic enthusiasts, who's the most famous comic book artist? Who's the best comic book artist in the world? Stan Lee. Now I love Stan, but it makes me really angry because he can't draw.
Well, what Stan Lee is good at was self-promotion.
Well, he was, and bless him, you know.
Still is.
He trades in London now, doing his best. But that's London's the Stan Lee convention. This is the Jack Kirby convention. I'm a lot cheaper than Stan Lee. But you know. So back to the school children. There they are. I chatted to them about superheroes. And most of them had seen superhero movies based on Jack Kirby. Most of them were fans of them, and you know they had lunch boxes, they had T-shirts. They had one guy had a Hulk watch. It was brilliant. I was quite you can't get them in my size. I try and find Hulk watches. There's a gap in the market there. And one kid actually said he collected comics. We'd never heard of Jack Kirby, which was no, I think he meant Dino, but. It's upsetting, and I know they were only, but I think it applied to kids that are teenagers, and you ask them, their mates, Jack Kirby, no idea who's my favourite comic book artist, Stan Lee, and I punched them in the face. It's important to teach children, and it's the same story the world over. So why doesn't Jack get recognition for being one of the most creative and influential minds of the last century? Everyone's heard of the X-Men, everyone's heard of the Fantastic Four, the Hulk, Thor, Iron Man, Captain America. They've seen the movies, they've literally bought the T-shirts, but they haven't heard of Jack Kirby.